this being the only Lapis-centered episode of this season, I always think about jumping into the bandwagon whenever I think about Lapis' character, whenever I think about the critiques towards her in videos. But as time went past, and after watching defense videos centering around Lapis, well, people are defending her, I have to admit that room for Ruby really sums up a lot that this episode showcases Lapis just trying to be adjustment towards the environment around her, even though that she has improved immensely since Season 3, but at the same time not completely. This episode centers around one of the Rubies called Navy Ruby, who landed in front of Steven's house, and he's convinced that she has changed, like everyone else who is Peridot and Lapis. And since that this is a Lapis episode centering around her not believing that Ruby has changed, even though that she totally learns that Ruby will like anything, she couldn't be able to understand at first, but she learns that she just isn't like Ruby, judging of how that it took time for her to adjust the earth around her. For me personally, whenever I think about this aspect centering around Lapis' character, it gave me more of an understanding of how she feels in this, well, she is slowly getting better by getting away from her trauma, and with this episode indicating that she sees something in Ruby that she doesn't, and the fact that she still isn't on board with it up until she had a conversation with Steven and Peridot. She just doesn't have the same emotions when it comes to Steven and Peridot, who are happy most of the time, including Pumpkin. And believe me, the moment where she proves to herself or mainly shouts out that she was right all along, even though in this case she thinks otherwise, it kind of shows that her way of happiness is a lot more different in comparison to Steven and Peridot. And believe me, it is really confusing to see how she's portrayed like this for how she is fooled by Ruby. But believe me when I say this, is that when you have that realization, well, you were right all along, believe me, this episode isn't meant to be taking itself seriously, considering that the Ruby that we're talking about isn't the same Ruby that Steven dealt with in the final episode of Season 3. Navy Ruby really gave me the impression, with her liking everything around her, shows that it wouldn't even work for her to have an additional character as the Crystal Gems, because to tell you the truth, it isn't because that Ruby is fused with Sapphire as Garnet. It's mainly the fact that with her enjoying everything and Steven and Peridot are on board with it, except Lapis, it's literally impossible to feel sympathy towards her when she's happy 24/7. And when it comes to the ending, well, Lapis was right all along, well, Ruby stole the woman eye, I can guarantee you that if Steven and the Crystal Gems were giving Ruby a chance in order to fit in, I'm pretty sure that the episode would have been done differently, considering that Paul won't be able to give this Ruby a chance, while Garnet would probably give her a chance, but at the same time, she would have ended up thinking otherwise, similar to Lapis towards the end of the episode. Since that she only appears in the beginning up until the end, while she is willing to give Ruby a chance, I can guarantee you that her direction will have been a lot more different when it comes to seeing different things in Navy Ruby in comparison to Lapis. But then again, they probably want to have the spotlight center around Lapis in order to give her an episode. I mean, to tell you the truth, for how Lapis is portrayed in this episode, even though that it's not really much when it comes to how she's experiencing life on Earth and trying to grow amends with Peridot, whenever I think about the ending alone, her own happiness makes her divine in comparison to the happiness of Steven and Peridot. As far as I'm concerned, even though that whole development is gonna be kicked into high gear in Season 5, I can see clearly that Lapis's surroundings is mainly her just trying to grow her own enjoyment in comparison to the enjoyment that Steven and the other characters have. Believe me, whenever Lapis is experiencing something, it's basically her own direction in comparison to the other directions that we've seen. Which, for me personally, made me sympathize and relate to Lapis a lot more. As far as I'm concerned, with how different she is, I think that my perspective back then would have had a huge different perspective by going on the bandwagon for the people have been going on, and without taking that bandwagon anymore, it kind of sums up a lot onto why Lapis is portrayed the way that she is. And I am looking forward to her portrayal in Season 5 when I get the chance to talk about her in those episodes. I'm giving this episode a 7.5 out of 10.